I'm the only white face in this area. You don't belong here. Stop, I'll shoot you in the back.
Here we are, guys. Another episode of Locked Up with Copville. This is probably going to be my favorite episode for the reason why I started this podcast. This podcast was designed to not just be another, I did this while I was on duty, I did that while I was on duty. I want to bring awareness to law enforcement, administrations, politicians, and the struggles of what it's like to be a cop, be a good cop, and end up on the wrong side of things. So I have two special guests, Drew and Barbara Oldrati. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to explain why you're here and the story that is probably going to blow everybody's mind.
Well, first of all, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it. My husband and I started this journey last summer, just going around and wanting to get the truth out there about our son, who is a New Jersey police officer in Mantua Township, who was involved in a critical incident back in 2021. A man with a gun, was deemed a justified shoot, but with the new laws in New Jersey, everything has to go in front of a grand jury. And when the information was presented, the new attorney general came in and he was indicted. So,
I've done some research and I remember hearing about this. It was September of 2021 when this happened, and it was a call about two armed people apparently in somebody's yard, right? Somebody called 911 and said, I have armed subject in my yard. So that is a very high stress call for a law enforcement officer responding to a scene. We have no other information. We're driving fast. Our heart rate's going up. And you want to kind of break down what happened once he arrived?
Yeah. So like you said, the call was with burglary in progress, an armed man. So when the first Corporal Robert Layton, pulls up to the scene, he's met at the curb by a man standing there. And when he rolls down his passenger side window to engage the man in conversation, the man immediately puts a gun up to him. The gentleman is on an open call with 911. So you hear the dispatch say, are you speaking to my officers? And you hear Corporal Layton give the command to drop the gun, drop the weapon, and he accelerates to get out of harm's way because, it's 1:30 in the morning, it's low light conditions. He's actually kind of stunned that, he's pulling up to this house where the call's coming, and here's this man meeting him immediately with a weapon in his face.
Yes, and I watched the body cam and saw that, and I'm going to stop right there with something I see already probably a problem that the cops couldn't control. Was the dispatcher would have gotten a description of the caller and said, hey, what are you wearing? Where are you going to be? And I know it's different everywhere, but I was actually a dispatcher for my first year waiting to go to the police academy in 1999, 2000. So that's that already starts off with like a critical piece of information that I don't ever hear relayed is like, hey, the caller is wearing a gray shirt, blue shirt. He's standing out front in the yard. That would have been something very helpful. And all these incidents that turn tragic, there's usually multi-layered problems, but it always ends up being the cop's fault. No matter what happens at the end, there's never anybody else held accountable. It always seems to be the cop's fault. So I heard that the first corporal yells, he's got a gun, takes off, and then I think your son is the second one on scene.
Yes, my son is pulling up behind him, so he's following the corporal. So when the corporal stops, Sal stops, the corporal gets out of the car, Sal gets out of the car, and then he says to him, he's got a gun. Sal says, where? Who? He said, right there. And he says, drop the gun. And as my son comes out of the vehicle, he uses his vehicle to kind of shield him a little bit. And you can see it in the 911 call. He kind of pops up, he looks around, backs, and then engages him because he sees that the gun is now.
Are you looking to boost your energy, focus, and overall well-being? Emerald Medical's hormone replacement therapy program is designed for people who want real results. Their expert team personalizes your treatment to optimize performance and restore balance, whether you're battling fatigue or you just want to feel like yourself again. Prices start at just $160 a month, and podcast listeners get 5% off with code COPVILLE. Veterans and first responders also receive exclusive discounts. Visit emeraldhrt.com to get started. The video we were talking about, I'm just going to play this short part. This is the arrival, I believe, and how fast this happens. This is the the end of the 911 call, and then the arrival.
Emergency. I have 2 intruders in the back of my yard. One of them had a gun for sure.
A grand jury has indicted Mantua Township police officer Salvador Oldrati with 1 count of manslaughter in connection to the death of 49-year-old Charles Sharp III.
Where?
Sharp was still on the phone with 911
we'll stop it right
dispatch
there
when he
just
was
to
shot
start.
multiple times.
So your son, you hear the first word, he's out of his car, and the first words out of his mouth are "where," and he's presented with a man with a gun in his hand.
Correct.
That is like 3 seconds out of his car, and he has to process all that information in that amount of time, which is
Right.
it's just
And in the news media, they're very complicit because they just
Yes.
lie. And even the attorney general, when he gave his statement, was all just fabricated. Like, oh, the officer just pulled up, and within seconds he shot him. And, they just lie. He has all
Yes.
the facts. He has all the findings. He has all the information.
it's a Monday morning
In this
quarterback of
case.
epic proportions. It's
Right.
20 months. It's 20 months later.
Right. And they want to try it in the public's eye. They want the sympathy. They wanted to make it look like the officer's fault. When really, when you put the whole picture into play, this is what officers have to do every day.
Yeah,
They have to use deadly force at
And
times.
I'm gonna play it real
Reasonable.
quick again. I'm gonna play it real quick, and I think this goes
Killed
goes back
outside
a
of
little
his
more
home on
on this
September
next part of it.
14th, 2021.
So here you go.
Are you talking with my officers?
I mean that your son is out of the
Authorities say
car.
while Oldrati was exiting his
Here's
police
this
vehicle,
might be the first guy coming up.
responding officer yelled, "He's got a handgun on him right there." That's when Oldrati fired his
That's your
service
son.
weapon and struck
He has
Sharp
that much
multiple
time.
times.
Like, come on, he
He's
has that
deeply
much
missed.
time
My
to
brother
make an absolute critical. I'm gonna get rid of that guy.
Oh, well,
An
and then
abs-
they play the
Yeah.
brother, who, by the way,
Yeah.
hasn't had a relationship with his brother for like 10 years.
They
And
all of a sudden they do though.
they do.
So let's break that down. You're pulling up to a scene. You have a critical incident. Your adrenaline is through the roof. It's 1:30 in the morning. You have an armed subject. Worst call you ever want to get. Your partner says he's got a gun. Your son gets out. You can see in that video he has about 3 seconds to determine if his life is in danger. There's a man with a gun. Now I'll go back to it. And I said this on another episode about presenting. There was another shooting where a guy came to the door with a gun. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. It's kind of like a known thing in society. If the cops are around, you probably don't want to have a gun in your hand. So it's not a good thing to do. And that just shows how fast cops have to make a decision. And it's not fair for anybody to go back and look at that. My wife makes a great case. I'm going to finish. She says I never finish myself. So it's not fair for anybody to go back and make that determination of what is reasonable unless you've done the job. And where I say that is, you go to a grand jury now, 20 months later, not one person in that grand jury has ever had to think about that decision your son had to make.
That's correct.
Ever. Nothing close. So we as cops, and this is catching on to me because it's a problem. We are never given the opportunity to be judged by a jury of our peers, because cops will never be on a jury. They will never stack a jury with cops. The closest you're going to get is the military. The military is judged by other military members, so at least they have some type of knowledge of policies and procedures in the military. Your son had a grand jury indict him that has never, ever, ever been in that situation, and it's not fair.
That's correct. I mean, I say that all the time. We just had court recently, and we're trying to get our use of force expert thrown out because they know he didn't violate the New Jersey use of force policy. He didn't violate the Mantua use of force policy. He just pulled up. He didn't give commands. It says in the policy, when feasible. The other officer gave commands. So
Yes.
we as a society always focus on, the officer's actions. And yes, they have to act reasonably, but no one ever focuses on the people that are calling them out to the scene and what they were going through prior. So
And I know there's some stuff that came out about this guy's state of mind, and I know his girlfriend testified or cooperated at one point with some type of
Well, his
suicide by cop narrative or something like that.
His ex-wife.
go ahead, Drew.
Ex-wife. Okay, yeah. Is that? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the
Andrew.
ex-wife came out with a statement. She voluntarily gave a statement saying, her husband pretty much planned this. She knows it was his fault. He's had suffered from suicidal ideations for many, many years, alcoholism and drug use. And, there was no signs of anybody breaking in at all to his place,
That's what I was going to say. So he calls in a burglary of 2 armed men, and there's never been any evidence to show that there ever was a burglary of 2 men, and he's armed. And he conveniently he calls it in as armed men. So
there's no one breaking in. He's high on meth and cocaine and alcohol.
Was that in the toxicology?
Yes,
Okay.
high levels of it. And he comes outside with a gun and confronts the police. Listen, it'd been the best day in everyone's life if he just complied.
Yeah.
And left the gun in the house and never pointed the gun to police.
Well,
But he had other intentions.
I find it odd again that he's outside with the gun. Like most people, and he's high on meth, so let's just take it for what it's worth. But if as a cop, I'm a cop, retired now, 23 years. I don't believe I would go outside. If somebody's breaking my house, I have a Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 competitor on my nightstand with 3 21-round magazines. I am probably going to stand at my threshold of my bedroom if I see somebody coming through my front door, and as soon as they step through that door, they're going to be done. I am not, even as a cop, going outside to confront a burglar. Like the day that day's over, because you can't, even in Florida where I'm at, you can't go outside and shoot a burglar breaking in your car. You're going to get indicted. So there's no reason to even go out there. Like, I'm just going to stand there. You come in my house, then, we'll fix that problem. But why go outside with a gun? Like, it doesn't even make sense to be standing outside with a gun when the cops are coming. You called them. If you're that much in fear of a burglary, you should be like in your house protecting your castle.
Right.
No rational person is going to do that.
Yes.
No rational person is going to, knowing if your gun is loaded, unloaded, or a replica, is going to come out and point the gun at police, knowing your weapon doesn't fire.
Correct.
And
and
he did that.
We're not, and this is where it goes back to getting indicted by. We're not trained that way anyway. We're not trained to take rounds. We're not trained to get shot at first. We are trained to give commands when possible, but there is never a scenario where the book or your training is going to cover everything. And in that scenario, your son had 0 seconds to make a critical decision to protect the community, himself, and his fellow officers. And I think he did what a reasonable officer would do.
Sure, you're faced with someone pointing a gun in your direction at you. You're thinking, this guy's going to kill me. He's going to kill my partner.
And let's take this. Yourself. And I said something earlier, and I'll take this a step further. Is I said, dispatch could have gave a description. It still doesn't change it, because guy could have just called them there to kill them. He could have called them there to ambush. That happens every day now. Like, we're dealing with that at stoplights. We're dealing with that on domestics. So you can't point a gun at the cops. I don't care who you are. You cannot point a gun at the cops.
And that's the one thing, we said the whole time, because in New Jersey, it's what was Salvatore's reaction? Like, what did he know? It's about what he knew in that time. He didn't know the man was suicidal. He didn't know that was the homeowner. He is reporting to a high priority call. They don't have CAD systems in their car, so they're not getting updates. The dispatch did not tell the homeowner, listen, the police are going to be pulling up. Please because he says in the 911 call, I have a weapon. I have something here that my grandfather willed to me. Then he goes on and says it's a 45. I don't know what I can do with it. And again, just the manipulation. He does know what he can do with it, because he's a former military. Yeah. So he knows what he can do with the gun. He knows it's not a real gun. He knows his real guns were taken from him. This is all in the police findings, right? So once the initial investigation was done, just what Salvatore knew, pulling up, pointing a gun at one officer, turning and pointing the gun at him. Then when they go to do an investigation, right, because an investigation encompasses everything, the first thing the sister says is when she's told that he's deceased, was it suicide? He had many demons, and he lured the police out there that night. He was high on drugs. Was he hallucinating? Maybe. He went over to the neighbor's house. showing the young neighbor his gun, saying they're breaking in. He was going to, I think his words or something, he was going to F somebody up tonight or something. And the young man said, you need to let the police handle it. And he was, acting erratically all night. So that takes into account that this was planned, that this was suicide by police, we believe.
And
but they don't want to
no.
hear that, the courts.
No,
They don't want to hear that. They just want to, this is what the cop did. The cop was wrong. He wasn't wrong. He didn't violate the policy and the procedure. You can
No.
sit here and you can tell us what your opinion, what he thinks he should have done. That doesn't change the facts of this case. We should not be here. And this attorney general and the Office of the Public Integrity and Accountability, they all know it. They all know that this was a good shoot. Is it a pleasant shoot? No, somebody lost their life. It's tragic. But the officers know, and they know that this is a part of police life, and he did everything in his training to protect himself. And once he finished engaging the gentleman and knew that he was down and the gun was away, you hear him say, I thought he was going to effing shoot me, but then immediately jumps into life-saving techniques. How is that reckless? Because they charge him with 1 count of reckless manslaughter. Well, I can list 100 reasons why everyone else in this situation was reckless, why the dispatcher was reckless, why Mr. Sharp was reckless. And his ex-wife, she knew that he was not right, because she asked to speak to the detective. And she said, I feel sorry for that officer. I want to give him a giant hug. My ex-husband did this. She has a notebook. She has an account of all the times that he's been suicidal. He slit his wrists. He's been, taken to, put away in mental facilities or try to get himself better. He's been in, alcohol facilities. This has been decades of this man fighting demons. And because he chose that he wanted to go out by police, okay, this is the situation that we're in. Because my son, even if he wasn't indicted, this is something that would stay with him forever. And let's not mention the fact that if this gentleman lived, he would have been charged. He would have been charged. He would have been in jail, because you're pointing guns at a police officer. He had paraphernalia in his house. You're making a fake 911 call. You're highly intoxicated.
And even if not charged, he was going through some type of, take the criminal side of it, he was going through some mental problem. He was having a drug-induced mental health, whatever you want to call it. Unfortunate. And like you said at the beginning, this is an unfortunate incident. Nobody, I don't care what the media says and what all these pieces of shit that don't like cops say, we don't want to kill people. I've never walked in the, I've never walked in my job. No, I've never walked in the office in 23 years and said, today's the day I want to blow somebody away. SWAT raids, all that stuff I did. I don't ever want to go through. I don't want to take anybody else's life. Honestly, I want everybody to live peacefully. That's why I became a cop. But you never want to do that. But it's an unfortunate incident. But here's where I separated. The agency supported him, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So just like any other time when I got demoted, and it was very much people disagreeing with what happened, it's pretty easy to determine common sense if you did something wrong. You look at it, and if the whole agency goes, hey, bro, you yo, man, we can't do nothing with you here. You screwed up. It's obvious. When you have support from your agency on a thorough investigation, and they say you're good to go, and you come back to work, that's it. That should be pretty obvious, because even a good agency, they're still going to protect themselves. They're still going to protect their careers. They're still going to protect. The politicians are going to get involved, even on the local level. I don't care how much they support police. You do something wrong, you're done. So the fact that your son was cleared by the agency and allowed to come back to work, though unfortunate, still leads me down the path that what he did was reasonable. Mm-hmm. So, and then
he sat down before he could go back to work. They had to sit down with a representative from the prosecutor, and I think she was a liaison with the Attorney General's office, to be able to sit down and go over all the findings, because his police department didn't have the findings of the shooting response team, which is a separate agency that is employed by the Attorney General's office. For transparency, they send out their shooting response team, and the shooting response team does the investigation, and then they turn the investigation over of the findings. And when they looked at everything, they could clearly see this was a justified shoot, because like you said, he would have been suspended with pay or without pay, which he is now. They could have locked him up right then and there if he was so reckless in his actions, but they chose to, sit down and say, and this is her exact words, and the name of the lady that was there, I'm not going to reveal that, but she said, while this, is not a perfect shoot, obviously, because somebody lost their life, this is nothing criminal because this was a justified shoot, and whatever, paraphrasing. And, he was able to return to work very quickly after that, once they found did the total investigation. But now they make it like, oh, well, like I said, we were in court a few weeks ago, and oh, well, the shooting response team doesn't determine that. Well, who determines that? Oh, the grand jury. So you're telling me a grand jury of people that know nothing about law enforcement and nothing about investigative work, they determine whether his actions were reckless? And what are you talking about? Why do we need detectives? Why do we need investigators then? If you're leaving it to 23 people who don't know the ins and outs of being a detective and investigation, it's just totally preposterous. They lie. They put it out in the media because, like you said, they want to play on people's feelings. And meanwhile, here we are. It's going up to 2 years that my son was indicted, suspended without pay. He was getting newly married, and now he has a baby, and his whole life is on hold. While we play this clown show of a game here.
Exactly what it is.
If I can say it as nicely as possible.
Yeah, that's a good word. I use that word a lot.
I mean, these are not. These officers. And this is happening a lot in New Jersey. Once the new attorney general,
I've heard horror stories.
Came in. He's weaponizing it against the police. These are not police brutality cases. This is, stuff has gone down. Criminals having weapons, illegal weapons, criminals having things they should not have, or people, like you said, that are having mental issues. And it's reasonable. This is a part of police officers' job.
Yes.
They may have to take that life, they may have to save a life, or they may have to give their life. And my son acted quickly in his training to save his life and his corporal's life. How many police officers aren't coming home because,
how many police officers in that quick, and it's unfortunate, but how many police officers get out, process, and get rounds on target that quick?
Correct.
Let's take that like factor. Unfortunately, it's a bad situation. It sucks for everybody involved. But that was very well executed. And I don't say that funny wise. That was he got out of the car, he got cover, he identified a weapon, and he took action, and then accurately took action
within seconds.
Fast. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. Yeah. And here's something for people that don't understand a grand jury, because I always joke about this. The old saying is you can indict a ham sandwich. In a grand jury, because I've never been on one that I know of. I think they tried to indict me once, but I didn't know about it. But I've only been involved in grand juries when I worked homicide cases as a detective. But in a grand jury, so anybody watching doesn't understand, there is no your son doesn't get a defense in that grand jury.
No.
The prosecutor takes whatever they want to tell a grand jury, whatever they want to paint, and then they present it, and it's completely biased. You could take my phone right now, and my phone would be guilty of something, and they could present it to a grand jury, and they would indict my phone this afternoon for some crime. So that grand jury, that's the scary part about a grand jury, is they only hear what the prosecutor or the attorney general wants them to hear. They don't hear about the guy being suicidal and all that problems and all that.
They don't hear the witness accounts from the ex-wife. They don't hear nothing. And then I say to myself,
poor homeowner got shot by a cop. That's what they hear.
And I didn't even know that, going through this process, because, what my son would say, well, Mom, what if the grand jury? I'm like, Salvatore, once they see all the evidence,
they don't see it.
And not knowing that they don't see it all. Like, how is that even? Listen, if you want people to really look at the information and see if there's enough evidence to move it on, then give them the evidence. Why are we picking and choosing what we want to get an indictment to say, he was indicted, so he must be guilty? And that is so far from the truth.
Correct.
That it's unbelievable, the low level of what you have to present.
It's almost illegal. Because here's the thing: as if I'm writing a search warrant or a warrant for somebody as a detective, if I omit anything positive for the defendant, I can actually almost be committing perjury or considered lying by omission. So if I know anything in favor of him, you cannot omit it. But in a grand jury, they omit anything that favors the person they're indicting. And it's one of those double-edged swords, because when you're investigating a homicide, obviously you want the bad guy to get indicted. So you don't really get up in arms when they present this one-sided case. Shoot somebody as a cop, and unfortunately you get to see the other side of it, where you're like, wait a second, like, this ain't right. Like, they're not saying anything. You can indict every cop that shoots somebody.
Right.
Can almost be indicted if they present it the right way. So now you got political bias, you have prejudice against the officer if there's any history going back between, let's say, a hometown prosecutor and a cop have some bar fight or have some issue 3 years ago. Now you got a prosecutor that can present a one-sided case. It's a flawed system. It's a flawed system when it comes to that stuff. And I'll say it again and again. Jury your peers doesn't exist, and a grand jury in that situation, it's not fair for the state or an attorney general to be able to present a one-sided case, and then your son he gets 2 hours notice that he's indicted. I think it was
2 hours.
2 hours. He's driving along, minding his business. 20 months, living, promoted since the incident. Officer of the year since the incident. Life is normal. Life is back as normal as it can be for a human being who unfortunately had to take somebody's life, and then find out it wasn't even the scenario that it was presented as. Most humans would have a hard, and I'm sure your son did. It's a hard thing to deal with as a human being.
Well,
it's not easy.
Yeah, it's hard for him. His fiance at the time, now his wife, my husband and I, my mother, my brother, we are a police family. My husband has 37 years on in Philly, SWAT, with SWAT. And I mean, we are a police family, and we all support each other. And we also can see, they say, okay, corruption. Well, what is it? Under 10% of cops are actually corrupt. And they're the ones that are protecting the corrupt politicians and everything they're going through. And that's why we started speaking out, first of all, for my son, because he can't. But then last March, we find out the head of the OPIA, who is going after these police officers, now he steps down with all this corruption swirling around about the unit. And news article after news article is coming out about how they're, prosecutorial misconduct, withholding exculpatory evidence. And this is exactly what they did to him. And, even recently as February, the GOP members in New Jersey are calling for Matthew Plankton's resignation because he's just destroyed his state with his left progressive ways, and what he's doing to these officers and these fictitious things, but yet all the corruption they're doing behind the scene. We've reached out to senators, we've tried to call people, I've sent letters. No one calls you back because no one wants. They're all connected, or nobody wants to be bothered with it. And they say, well, it just has to go through a trial.
It's an unfortunate. I lived in Jersey, so I grew up there. I didn't understand politics at the time. I moved to Florida when I was 17. I had no idea really what a Democrat or Republican was at 17. And I learned, unfortunately, that area is notorious for. I mean, I think he was appointed, right? He wasn't even elected. He was appointed by the governor. Yeah, he appointed by the governor. Comes in.
He had an AG there, and after 2 years during my son's shooting, he found there's nothing wrong with it. Grew well.
Another guy comes in with a different opinion, with a different agenda.
And years later, this guy comes in and starts
and he was part of
to fund the police movement.
Yeah,
he
was part of the Cory Booker impeach Trump movement, from what I read. He was part of Cory Booker's team that tried to impeach the president. So he's obviously against cops. Yeah, he's against anything right at that point. So from what I understand, he's indicted numerous cops in this similar situation where he came in after the fact and and I don't want to spread rumors, but the way it was explained to me was he just kind of went down and said that one, and just started saying, we're going to indict all these guys.
There's a lot of police officers that are in the same situation right now, and some of their cases were thrown out because they withhold the exculpatory evidence, and they had a judge that was strong enough to throw these cases out. We had where we did file a motion to have this dismissed based on lack of evidence, no prima facie, lack of probable cause. And when we got to the hearing that day, it was told to our lawyer that he was only allowed to argue these 3 points. And I said, well, they're not even the 3 points that are, like the attorney general violated their own policy. It wasn't even like the big,
all the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Couldn't discuss it.
We weren't. They said we weren't.
I'm surprised. What's the judge like? Is it a? Do we know the party affiliation of the judge that's seeing it?
She's, from what I understand, she's Democratic, but apparently under the old Democrat regime, not the
Not the
left
anti-cop,
progressive.
not the
Right,
anti-cop.
right. And
defunded.
I mean, she calls balls and strikes. She's when
Okay.
we go to court, but you know, somebody needs to stand up and say, this, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't.
There's,
It doesn't make sense.
how do you even proceed with this in a trial when, again, not my opinion, if you look up the New Jersey laws on self-defense for police officers or use of force for police officers, it states that an officer does not have to wait for.
Is that in that policy? I have the
Um,
policy.
I think there's the use of force
All right.
policy. It's
Look
either
here
in
real
there
quick.
or it might be in the grand jury proceeding, the policy that I have that's in the grand jury,
All
that
right.
base, and I can send that to you and we can, put that up. But
Let me see what I
it
got here.
states they don't have to
Wait.
wait. They don't have to wait for them before
You don't wait. You don't wait. No, you don't have to wait. And I've covered. I covered the one in Grand Rapids recently. Christopher Scher. That one's unfortunate, but there's. I don't want to say this the wrong way. There's some questions in there about use of force and like the level of the taser and getting it taken away. I still agree that he's not guilty of murder.
Right.
This is and then there's the one, Brent Hankinson, which I agree is completely garbage. He didn't even hit anybody. This one to me is the most obvious, not an issue one I've ever seen. I've never seen a more cut and dry, unfortunate. The word unfortunate is going to continue to come up. It is not a great. It's not a good. Nobody wants this on there. You shoot a bank, right? You shoot the hostage shop, the guy with the lady, like we train in the academy. Okay, you may walk out of that one with like, hey, I don't want to kill anybody, but hey, man, the dude's got a baby or a guy's got. Nobody wants to kill anybody. Again, I say it again, and then to find out it was the homeowner, that is just traumatic. But at its face value for the I didn't know they didn't have CAD. So at its face value for what your son had to deal with, it is. I don't know that you can find even the most left-leaning cops. I don't think you can find anybody that would argue that this is not justified. This is about as clean cut as it gets, and it baffles me that we're even having this discussion.
Well, when I say we were told that there was a lot of fighting within, because they had conversations about Salvatore's case, and prosecutors and higher ups or whatever, and they said, this is not an indictable case. It's, like you said, unfortunate, tragic, but this is not an indictable case. And we were led to believe that the grand jury proceeding is just a part of the process, but they've talked about this many a times. And when he was indicted, when I tell you jaws dropping, when I tell you chiefs of police, heads, even people in the state police team, people within the prosecutor's office, nope, they were up in arms. They could not believe this was happening. In fact, they wouldn't even, when we had to turn him in, then the lawyer brought him to prison that night, the jail, and I think it was it state police, Drew? Who would not? They refused to walk him in. They said this is not right.
The state police and the attorney general's team. The investigators there. That process the scene, and they told him, "Hey, kid, man, good job. No problem." But then they indict him under this new regime. Indicts him, not the old one, and they can't believe it. And they refuse to walk him into the jail.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the persons
with Camden, right? Camden County Jail.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute disaster that is.
So this is where we've been now for 2 years, because they keep kicking the can down the road. I guess they either want to see if they're going to get him to the point where he takes a plea deal, which we're not doing that, because
have they offered any pleas?
They offered one, and we're like, absolutely not. Like, no, no way. And then, either he gets to the point where he either, financially is so distraught and can't live that he takes the plea, or I guess they want him to off himself. But I'm going to tell you right now, neither of them are going to happen, because if I have to take 5 jobs and my husband has to work 20,000 extra hours a week overtime, and his in-laws and his wife, if we have to do all that, and our family, we got a great support system, that's what we're going to do. We're going to see this to the end, and we're going to win, because they have nothing. They have like I said, everything in the laws, everything in the use of force, all supports everything he did.
Yep.
There's nothing against him.
Like I said, I would not be. I have taken a stand that cops do something wrong, I'm going to call them out. If admin does something wrong,
Sure.
I'm going to call them out. I would not be sitting here if I had any slight. I mean, or it'd be a different conversation. I would be letting you, and I would be presenting my opinion. I cannot understand how in the United States of America, with body camera, facts, calls, witnesses, everything you have, this is by far the strongest case for being justified I have ever seen a police officer get indicted for. This is the one. And that it frustrates me that I know you guys have talked to some, I'm not gonna say anybody's name, but you've talked to some bigger people and some you get their ear, but I'd be fucking furious if I had a button to push and I had any connection with anybody. And that's what I'm hoping this platform takes me, is a little bit higher to help with this stuff. But this is infuriating as a police officer to watch your son struggle and go through what already is, and I say this, what already is the worst day of his life. It's not the job and the situation that ever kills you. It's what the other people in the job or the department or the attorney general's office in this case, it's what they do to you that causes the most harm, because he was already going to go through it. But at the end of the day, he can get in his head and say, I did what was reasonable and I had to do what I had to do. It's easy. Right. When you do what you had to do and you're supposed to do, and then the politics and the job turn on you. I know the agency didn't, which I'm grateful they didn't, but it's still part of the job, which is the attorney general's office, turns on you. You are never prepared. From the day you take oath and the day you get sworn in, you're told you do the right thing, you're always going to be okay. You're never mentally prepared for what your son has gone through, and that's the most unfortunate part.
And that's because we've allowed the last 4 years, we've allowed a different narrative to take place, with police and in people's opinion. And I say, get in the car and go to the toughest cities and ride along with them. And that's what we have to start doing here. Like, I watch police law news where they do the clips of one officer just pulled up, guy pulled over. He didn't even get to the car. The guy has a gun out the window. Like, people need to see this instead of pushing the fake news media that they push on regular news channels and things like that. Put the real truth out there and take all these naysayers and it, show them what it's like to be a police officer, where you think you're just pulling over somebody for a speeding ticket. You walk up, you have a gun in your face. That's how quick things can change. And until we start changing our mindset, we're not going to convince everybody, but the leaders of this country, and I do believe, now that we have our new president, our old new president back in, that the pendulum is swinging back. But still, I'm still, like, I've sent letters, I've sent certified mail to get anybody I can to be aware of this case, because like you said, this should be open and closed. But when you start to put it in front of 12 people, you don't know who those 12 people are going to be. You don't know if they're compromised. You don't know if they're, activists and they hear it's a cop's case and they lie in the voir dire process, which just happened in one of the cops in New Mexico. And the fact that we don't support our police and, him going through this, like I said, we're all financially helping him do what we have to do. We have Give, Send, Go. And in the short 10 months that we've been doing it, we raised over about $10,000. But let's look at somebody like Luigi Mangione, who kills somebody. He's got hundreds of thousands. Or the other cases that they're for the criminals, they're raising $400,000 or $500,000.
The kid that does the track meet, the kid that stabbed the kid at the track meet's got hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And for our police officers who are out there doing the right thing, we give them squat.
That's unfortunate. That is
right.
Really,
and we're not here, like I said, for a money grab. We're taking care of him, and anybody that donates, truly appreciative, because it just helps us, get through.
We'll put all those links up and we'll put it on my page.
But just the fact that, and I know people go on with their lives, but with the camaraderie, taking call, just a phone call, a text message to him, letting people know that we're thinking of him and we're going to get through this. It's a struggle for him day to day. He's always has on his mind,
I can't imagine.
are they going to take me away from my wife and my child or my children? What's next year going to look like? How long is this going to linger for? And it's a daily struggle as parents, because although he is, has a wife and has kids, he's still our child. He's still our son. And the stress that's on us every day, like, when is this going to be over? And it's, like you said, it's so cut and dry, in my opinion. How are we here? And who can come in to help us? Like, I've sent letters to the White House. I would love anybody out there that can get me in with President Trump. I say it all the time. This is our 10th podcast, and I didn't think we would even get to 1 or 2, let alone 10. And we're going to keep going.
Yeah,
so.
and I don't like to drop names, but I have a few people that I know that moved up into the federal government, and I reached out about the Brett Hackett's case, and I'll definitely reach out about this one. To go back on something you said, is the problem is, I think, with the police not raising money, is that the left are the rich and famous that support the criminals. And that's where most of the right, these guys, the cop, we don't have a lot of money. So as we do donate we come together and we donate, but those criminals get donations from celebrities and Soros funded organizations to be anti-police rhetoric. So they get this massive amount of money to continue that, what I consider to be a weakening of society narrative. We want the police weaker. We want the police hands tied more. Now we're getting into, and the next bridge I'm crossing is with Dominic Izzo about, they're starting to infiltrate our police with like these dance videos. Now they're dancing to like rap music in Atlanta, and they're doing a crip walk, and they're doing all this crazy stuff, and they're starting to infiltrate our police with people that are not speaking the language correctly. It's starting to just deteriorate. But that side has all the money, and your cops got to go back to work. Like all his friends, I'm sure, would love to give him hundreds of $1,000s, but they're hardworking, regular people, and it's on the celebrity side that raises all these monies for these criminals is part of what I consider a big organization with that the new Democrat side of politics that wants the police to fail. So,
and they have like his police buddies, the ones that first of all, the ones that were there that evening, his support, he's not even allowed to talk to. So for 2 years,
he can't,
because there'll be witnesses.
Tampering with witnesses.
He can't. Well, he was with them for 2 years prior to being indicted. But anyway, so he's lost his support system with his brothers in blue.
He can't even talk to his best friends now.
He can't, and anytime we have fundraisers and things like that, they do. But I'm talking about the people in our society who these officers wake up every morning and may not come home to do this on their free will. They are very aware of the risks, but we have to start backing them and supporting them and saying, we appreciate what you're doing. We have to break this system of this cult that, all these police officers are bad and all these criminals are good. We are reversed in this country with bad versus, the bad's good and the good's bad. And we, even when he's cleared, because he will be cleared,
I agree.
We need to continue this fight, because today it's our son. Tomorrow it's your son or daughter. Tomorrow it's you. We got to band together and we have to stand up, and we have to get people that are doing the right thing up in the administration, and they have to stand up, even though it's not federal. This is state and local, but they got to speak up. New Jersey is a cesspool.
It's so bad.
And you can see it right now, everything that they're doing in New Jersey. Like, come on, somebody's got to.
We went to, I'm part of Counterculture. What Counterculture is, what we designed Counterculture for, is to be an alternate, real news network for first responders. So we're not going to get on TV and we're not going to get on our podcast and give you that everything is great, we just want to help people. We're going to tell it like it is, and that's why we're doing what we're doing with you and getting these messages out. But the problem, like, I went with the Jersey City for a live show back in April, and I'm talking to the Jersey City cops. Their hands are absolutely tied. They can't do any police work. They can't do anything. They can't touch anybody. They can't put their hands on anybody. And the other thing, Drew, you said you did 30, how many years?
I'm 36 years currently.
So that is dying. We talked about this last night on the Counterculture live show. 36 years, nobody's going to do 36 years. It's going to start dropping. I did 23 before I threw the flag in, and I loved being a cop. There was nothing more on earth than but what we're having now, again, guys are going 2-3 years, they're out. 2-3 years, they're out. They can't take it. Guys like us are done. Like we're the old school generation of cops that just tolerated all the bullshit. We love the job. We love to serve people, and we stuck it out. That's another problem I see is as people see what happens to your son, why do I want, explain to me again why I want to be a cop. I want to make like decent money, make $100,000 a year, more with overtime, but I shoot somebody that's got a gun and I'm gonna get indicted. Like I put my hands on somebody who's run their mouth and spitting at me, and I'm gonna get indicted. And I got civilian up there. You guys have that civilian garbage where what was that board you guys said it was? What is that called?
Civilian board.
That's insane. So now it's like most of the messages I get are from big city cop, like asking about Florida. Florida, I will say, is still okay. We still have a pretty good.
Well, it's your governor too.
We have a great governor. We have great areas where we still enforce the law, and we do it. I think Texas is okay. Florida, Georgia State Patrol is really good. But I get these horror stories from all over the country from these agencies where these guys can't do anything anymore. Their hands are tied, and it becomes a good versus evil battle in your head. You're like New York City. Look at New York City. Those guys can't touch anybody. You can't do anything in New York City. You can't put your hands on anybody.
Well, when are the people going to stand up? Because ultimately,
that's the problem. Yeah.
We're not safe. If we don't have safe streets and we don't have law and order, okay, how are we going to protect, the generations to come? And you're afraid to go to your car, or if you carry and you shoot somebody, they're coming after you. Like, what are we doing? Like, it infuriates me beyond belief that every day I wake up and we have police officers, not just our son, but we have police officers that are in this situation where they cannot do their job.
Yep.
And again, I believe it's changing. I believe the pendulum's swinging back. You're always gonna, like, look what happened in New Jersey yesterday. They had one of the mayors, I think of Newark, they're trying to get into the ICE facility, and they're violent. Like, isn't that an insurrection? How come where's the news media? There's no investigative reporting. No. Nobody goes and researches this, because if they did, it would be bigger than what it.
They indicted the former president right in front of us. They
Twice.
indicted the former. They said all the Hunter Biden stuff was good bullshit. They lied to us about everything. It was a social experiment right in front of our eyes. They indicted the former president of the United States for absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
And what, like you said, I'm really scared that at some point that riot is coming. I think if President Trump would have got assassinated, I think the Republican side of the country would have lost their shit for the first time.
Oh, I don't think we would have ever been. We would have been done. America would have been done.
I think that side of the country would have finally said, "That's it. You've done. That's it." I'm real. Obviously, for many reasons, just the bare fact that you want to see anybody die, but how great of a president he is. But I think that would have been the textbook 100 years from now that everybody be talking about as like a massive turning point in America. So he wins, and like you said, hopefully this narrative continues to push. Cops Patel takes over the FBI. You have like Keith Pearson gets involved in DHS with Kristi Noem, and we're starting to actually enforce finally enforce the immigration laws that have been overlooked for years, and we're starting to do that. So it's starting. It actually is weird that it's starting high on the federal level, where they're just actively saying, "Fuck it, we're taking you to jail. You're going to jail. You're leaving this country," and hopefully that trickles down, like you're saying, to the local and state agencies.
Yes.
That they go do your job. We're gonna. And I am a firm believer that there needs to be some federal oversight into cases like your son's. It's unfortunate because the president can't even pardon your son because it's a state case. It's a state, but that's a problem where if it's so blatant, there needs to be some type of oversight to protect citizens from a rogue attorney general in a highly democratic state that is targeting police. There needs to be something comes out of this, some bill with your son's name on it. So I'm sure you guys would be ecstatic if you can make some change once your son is acquitted to not let this happen to anybody else's child.
Right. It needs to. And I know, like I said, it's federal versus state and local, but I still want to get the word out there. I still want people to know. I still want our administration to know, if they don't already, what these scumbags are doing in these democratic states, these liberal states. Alina Habba is going, she's talked about, was on Fox News talking about the Governor Murphy and Blanken about you harboring ICE, and interfering with ICE and legal immigrants, you're going to be prosecuted. I pray that they do that. I pray that they do it so she can go after them like they did that mayor the other day. Because I don't understand when we are at a point where we are protecting people that are non-citizens over our own citizens first.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we're not supporting our own police officers over, criminals or people that have mental, documented mental illness. And
it's illegal to come in the United States without doing it the right way. It's illegal. It's as illegal as running into somebody with your car. It's as legal as robbing a bank. It's illegal. You cannot
It's
do
illegal.
it.
But we have to give them due process on the way out.
For people to support
No process coming in.
Yeah, illegal. It doesn't make sense.
It's insanity.
And then they'll go out. They'll go crazy to protect these people. Like, what was it? Governors are like doing that. Their judges are saying we're not going to enforce it. Governors were saying we're not.
Lock them up.
I agree, but then you get a police officer doing his job, and they'll come down on him like no tomorrow. And I hope we're at the end of it, because all these cases that are going to where your son's is at this point, Hankinson, Sure, your son, they're all from that former administration where the Obama movement was the first big one that just destroyed the country for anti-police. And then we got the 4 years of Trump trying to fix it. And then the Biden administration again just took a war. We are, by grace of God, that chick, Kamala Harris, didn't win the election, we would be done. There would be nobody. We wouldn't even be able to talk about this. There would be no reason, because it would be over. This country would be done. So at least, like you said, we have a president, and hopefully we can get between, like, Officer Tatum, I know knows about this case, and some bigger name people that are taking a stand. That just like in Memphis, did you see the Memphis ruling the other day with those black guys that killed that guy? They found them not guilty, and they're already indicted in the federal system. But I look at that and I go, what is going on? Like, you got your son getting indicted, going to a grand jury for that, and you have 3 cops that kick a guy and beat a guy for 20 minutes on camera, not guilty. So
that's what I think people always confuse. They think they see one case and that all cops are like that. But there is a difference between doing your job and using reasonable use of force and police brutality. That's the cases that what's happening in Jersey right now, a few of them. And I've had cops reach out to me and prison guards, thanking me for what we're doing and being their voice, because they can't. This is so big in New Jersey, and I really wish somebody would contact me so we can make this go viral, so to speak, and let people know that this is what's happening. There's bad cops, there's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's bad politicians.
What do we kill? Doctors kill 200,000-300,000 people a year for medical malpractice.
I mean,
nobody does anything about it.
Right. We have to weed
this is
that
catchy.
out.
This is catchy. This is the thing everybody hangs on to. And you're right. The biggest problem in law enforcement is cops can't say anything. You cannot say anything because I did it. So briefly, the reason I'm gone from where I was is I finally took a stand and said, this administration is not right. I was a sergeant. I was like, this is fucked up. Like, I don't know what's going on here. And I was actually the best friend of the sheriff at the time. And I ended up supporting another candidate for sheriff because I said, this is out of control. Like, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. But I supported that candidate. The election was on a Tuesday. On the following Monday, I was transferred from detective. They tried to put me inside the jail as a jailer. And I'm like, yeah, not happening. But that's what happens. So even guys I work with that are going through nothing on this magnitude, but just going through it, watching the favoritism and the good old boys and guys get stuff they're not warned. You can't say anything. If you speak up as a cop against something like your son's incident, something about a crooked administration, about an attorney general, you are done. They are going to cook the books to make sure you are put in a position to look like a moron, or you just look like a bad person, and they'll just pile it on until everything you say is irrelevant. And that's a unique thing to law enforcement. You go to a business or any employee walks in, is like, hey, this place is messed up. They're probably going to listen because they're making money, so they want to hear other ideas. law enforcement, I'm sure you know, as you know, Drew, like you don't have that opportunity to speak out or say this is fucked up because you're done. You can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
if you do, then you're, like you said, you're blackballed and
yeah,
you're demoted, or, you know.
I posted a picture today. It's funny. 3 years ago today, there was a picture of me and a reporter from
I saw that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That they came to the station, national news company. My phone rang and they said, "You're the guy. Go take him on a ride along for a couple hours and drive around and show him what we do here." A year later, I was demoted and buried on a desk because I didn't agree with an investigation against my wife that where she was assaulted, and I spoke out about administration that lied about what they saw and heard, and they cooked the books on an arrest I made, and nothing I could do about it. And the unions down here, at least your son up there in New Jersey has some good union stuff, and there's a brotherhood. You come to Florida, there's nothing. You have no union, you have no power. There's
I mean,
nothing.
it's not what you think. I mean, he's, you
It's
know,
I
he's
heard, but it's still I think
yeah,
there's more numbers at least. You have a bigger
yeah,
group.
but they
We have
don't want to speak up. They don't, you know, they're not, you know, he's covered obviously
they can't speak up.
for certain things, but they
Repercussions.
can't speak up because
No.
then they're implicated. It's a vicious cycle, and they wonder why people don't speak up, and then when they do, they get blackballed. And it's, you know, again, with Salvatore's case, if you follow the policy and you follow the procedure, not your opinion, we shouldn't be here. We
No.
can't say, oh, well, the body camera only shows when your body is facing the direction. If I have my head turned and my body camera's going, you're not seeing everything. We have to stop
Exactly.
that. You know, it can never replace the eye, what the officer sees and what he hears. And again, all the nonsense that we're going through right now with what's happening with him, one day we will get closure. One day we will move
I believe
past
so.
this.
I believe
But
so.
right now, people need to know what's happening and what's being done to our police officers, because then you're not going to be safe. Nobody's going to want to do this
No,
job
no.
anymore.
I feel
Nobody.
so bad for your son to think every day. I'm sure I talk to him every day. He wakes up, he looks at his child and his wife and thinks there may be a trial in a few months where I don't get to see this anymore
Mhm.
because I did what I was trained to do.
Exactly.
Not reckless, not just
Nope.
shooting somebody, not jumping out of the car and raising hell. And in that case, the body cam for me speaks to me. The body cam is all I need to see. That fast with that information, I don't care that I can't see the gun and I can't see what happened on. All I need to do is see and hear your son's reaction. That is textbook
Textbook.
101. Trained, very well trained officer. I'll give him that. That was very textbook. Cover, stayed behind cover, didn't run out in the open, identified a gun, took action quickly. That is to me is you can't get much better than what your
No.
son did by textbook training and what the law and what the policy that I read dictates for use of force and deadly force. Your son did exactly what he was trained to do.
Even the charge of reckless manslaughter doesn't even fit.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
overcharged. Doesn't even
that-
fit there. If he was that reckless, soon after the investigation was completed, he would have been arrested.
Correct.
Not
The agency would have did it. You're right. There's no way. And he got promoted and he got officer of the year in the
for a
time
second
between.
time. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
It's a mess, and I just ask
this is
people that are
what we have
watching
to make
please
sure. Yes, we have to
help
make sure
support
our
us.
police are safe. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else. We get through Sal. We get Sal acquitted. We get him back to work. We get his life back in order, and then we don't forget Sal. We continue to push forward in his name to make sure. I would love to see legislation
Oh.
or a bill or an act
Something.
or something with his name on it, so that our police officers do not ever have to go through this again. And I'm terribly sorry to you guys that you're going through it. And I'm retired. I got every day is Saturday. Ironically, today is Saturday, but I always joke every day is Saturday. And as a moronic cop for 23 years that ran around doing all that stuff, I feel like this is my calling and this is what I want to do. And I want to help people like you get this word out, and we will do it. I will do whatever I can. I'll let you guys close out with anything you want anybody here to say, but I really appreciate you guys coming on. And like I said, you have my 100% support from myself, Counterculture, anybody on our network. We will help you, and I'll let you guys finish out.
Yeah, no, I mean, we appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, we do. And
Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate
yes,
it.
because together we are working together. We are the real news. We are, giving the information, the correct information, whether people like it or not. Just have an open mind. We're not asking about, opinions, what you think. It's just about following the laws, following the policies and the procedures, and doing the right thing. And we need more people to stand up and do the right thing for our son and for, future officers that may be put in this situation. So we'll continue working together and, just keep pushing forward. We have to. We have to get him freed.
Yep. Drew, thank you for your service, man. 36 years. Barbara, thank you so much for raising such a good kid that decided to protect his community. And I am deeply sorry you're going through this, and we'll continue to fight. Everybody, I'm going to put some links up. Please support the family. Please support your police. Do not let this happen. This is America. Cops are good. We need them, and we need to support our police. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm the only white face in this area. You don't belong here. Stop, I'll shoot you in the back!